So if I can welcome Gayla back up. So Gayla's going to jump on this panel with us, and we're going to discuss the actual rolling out of open banking with fintech. So I'll ask Phil Gillespie, Chief Product Officer at Money Dashboard, and also David Stubley, who's the CEO at 7 Elements and Cyber Defender of the Year in 2016. So why don't, Dave, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit further about what you guys do at 7 Elements?
Yeah, thanks. This works quite nicely. So we're a Scottish-based cybersecurity consultancy focused on hacking into stuff. Is the day job, which is great fun. Majority of our clients are financial sector focused, so retail banks, investment banks, and such like. Also the fintech end of the spectrum as well, so companies that are deriving new products to sell into that market space. So quite well positioned to see both sides of the argument from open banking. So we've helped banks securing their online banking platforms for many years and moving into the mobile space and trying to exploit mobiles. But clearly that's a closed ecosystem, and now we've got open banking with a number of different players in that space consuming that information and then sort of being more agile and delivering what the client requires, but equally trying to secure that and deliver a robust platform. So we're testing on that perspective as well, and that's pretty much us in a nutshell.
And Phil, Chief Product Officer at Money Dashboard, which was just awarded the UK's best personal finance app. A little bit more about Money Dashboard?
Yeah, thanks. At the British Bank Awards, we're delighted about that. We're part of the live market that Gavin was talking about. There is an active market that exists for open banking, where people can access their data, where they can benefit from all this, and this is what we've been doing for years and years and years. We're one of the founding members of FData, which lobbied, was a big part of the lobbying to get the Treasury to move open banking forward. And being able to give people the true view of their finances, being able to see what's going on, and then help them grow from that is a big part of what we do.
And Gayla, you're now doing some work with Startup Bootcamp.
I do. So I work with a number of fintechs. I also work on the partnerships, so bringing the banks into the collective and having them work more closely with those startups that are actually taking advantage of the open data that they now have to provide, how to best work with them. So I see a lot of conversation between the institutions and the actual, and those who are building the tech. I want to say they're not building the tech, they're just rewiring the tech because it's existed forever. It's just the way they look at it. And they're looking at new business models rather than necessarily new tech, but actually allowing the flexibility of new business strategy, thinking of ways to use and consume that data internally for the institution and externally for the customer base.
So if we open the discussion following on from Bill's conversation, one of the CMA's use cases is a dashboard where people can see all bank accounts in one place. Do we think that's a good idea?
I'll start with this one. Let's look at it from those who have first world problems and actually have multiple bank accounts. I think we've got to put this in context that we're not talking about those who are underserved or unbanked. And that's something else I think we need to address with open banking is actually the way we reach markets that haven't been served. For those of us with first world problems, yes, I want to know what I've got in. Just as a random example, yesterday I have a bill due. It's in the States. I need to check my account. I can't remember the login, which is always the case. But I need to make sure that I have money transferred from one of my UK accounts into a US account that they can then pay the bill. And being able to see that in one place would actually make that a lot simpler, especially when I lose passwords and can't remember things, which, by the way, with the color in the hair, the memory goes. So just the utility of it in terms of practicality, the speed to execution, moving that money, I think it's really critical to have a 360 view. We talk about having a 360 view with a customer at an institution. Why can't a customer have a 360 view of the institutions within their work?
Yeah, I think I agree, and echoing the point from Gavin earlier, doing it in a authorised and permissive way that has security built into it has got to be the right way. Breaking it by screen scraping and providing login details to a company that is breaching terms and conditions, that's not a robust and way to do business. So yeah.
But Phil, that's how Money Dashboard works, isn't it?
It is. I don't know if there's very many lawyers in the room, but very precise. I can't remember the correct term now for I'll tell you a story later. We don't breach terms and conditions. There is limited power of attorney, that's the word I'm looking for, which is completely fine. The banks don't like it. We do like it. So that's how Money Dashboard operates. To echo your point, if anyone's ever forgotten a bill, if they've realised they haven't paid a credit card off, if they've been charged, if they've missed anything because they've got this complexity and people's personal finances are not particularly high on the list, one of the best ways to get people to repay debt is to take it at source, to take it from their salary, because people make mistakes, because people don't have the right amount of money on the 16th of the month. So being able to get that visibility of where their money's going, what's coming up next, and answer questions like, will I be okay, and where will I be at the end of the month? There's an awful lot of people. There's 17 million adults in the UK who have less than £100 in saving, and there's even more that actually that have had over a bill over £100 in the last 12 months, and they can't afford that, and that then brings financial shocks, which brings overdraft charges, which brings credit and interest, and it just gets on the edge of this vicious cycle.
It absolutely snowballs. And I think that, again, we're talking about a different market structure. We need to talk about the various markets that are out there, the different kinds of consumers that either have multiple bank accounts and they're considered fairly stable, to those who are on the fringe. We're talking about underbanked in Phil's example here. The fact that they can actually see what they have, that they understand how money moves, that they understand how it works, how you accumulate credit, how you accumulate and understand debt, how you accumulate wealth or build wealth. I think some of the challenges that we have is the essence of financial literacy is not really provided by a single institution. There's an assumption that we give them in terms of the T&C sheet, that everyone reads them. How many people have actually read the Apple T&C sheet when you're downloading something from the App Store? No one. Imagine that's actually the case, even though I sit in an office. If someone reads these to me, I don't actually understand them. I sign off on them in order to get what I need at the moment. There's a component of financial literacy that actually comes with putting things in a full dashboard. And there's an opportunity to actually improve the customer experience and the customer financial health in that aspect. It's not just being able to see it. It's not just having a secure data aggregation point. It's not just trusting that the rails are going to be safe and that no matter who I lend or who I give permissions to, that I will have a limited liability and have protection, and it will be done in a secure environment. It's actually about how I understand the movement of money. And I think a lot of the conversations that we have at the very granular level forget that the end customer is supposed to be served. And we forget how this actually impacts the end customer. We think about what's shiny and new, it makes sense for us in terms of business strategy, but at the end of the day, the only reason institutions have trust is because they're supposed to protect and serve the end customer. And you do not build trust over the course of hundreds of years, millennia in some cases, in terms of the system, by then compromising how you actually serve the end customer. And I think there's a bigger breach of trust, or the danger of breach of trust now that we have tech as an intermediary, and that we actually don't have that closeness. We have some sort of perceived distance from the end customer. And I think we need to bring that back into the conversation when we're looking at how does this actually benefit. And interestingly enough, I think the banks are in a perfect position to be both the payment service provider and the account service provider. They have both sides of those coins. They're a trusted institution. And the length of time it actually takes them to adopt a payment service provider position, and they're turning over to third parties, that they are abdicating an element of that trust that they have acquired over years. So I actually think banks, in terms of their response to the market, ought to be a hell of a lot faster and a lot more interested in creating an open API platform, choosing the third parties that they work with, but also taking advantage of being the payment service provider, not just the account service provider. I'll get off my soapbox.
So what are the biggest challenges in working between banks and fintechs, Phil, and then Dave as well, if you can discuss what security challenges there are if banks are allowing these third parties, these fintech companies, to use the data? Is that going to be a conduit for cybercrime?
I'll take the commercial aspect, and I'll obviously leave the security side to you. One of the things that's interesting, one of the questions was, transactional data from banks. You would think that that's not controversial. It is controversial. What do you define as transactional data? What fields do you actually get? And there are some fields that, going through the conversations that are happening in the open banking implementation entity, that fintechs are saying, we must have this data. If we don't have this data, we can't properly serve people. And some of the fields are just arbitrary ones that you may not think add any value. But if the idea is, what account are you with? What charges are you getting from this? Where are your limits? If I don't know that metadata that goes along with when was the transaction posed, where was the location, what's going on, it means that you can't get the proper service. So there's the cooperation from the open banking implementation and the CMA and actually trying to get that forward. That requires an awful lot of collaboration between fintech and banks. From a commercial sense, as in Money Dashboard, every single one of the CMA 9 we've had conversations with, because the banks have realised, much to your point, we should be doing more on this. And what if we get some of these nice shiny fintechs to come in and do stuff for us? And there'll be an awful lot of hackathons, and there's some great events like this where you can go, we've got data, you can actually do stuff. There are an awful lot of fintechs that have been invited in and have been said, could you, if we give you access to our private secure API that no one is allowed to ever see, could you work some magic and then we'll kind of own that IP and take that away, and thanks very much. And you can do it for free. And you know, we've turned down some invitations saying, no, we are a serious company that is the market leader. If you want to work with us, treat us like proper businesses, treat us like partners. Otherwise, there will be other banks that are out there that are far more forward-facing that will say, we need to integrate properly, we need to work together. And I think it's the realization that it doesn't matter what your balance sheet is, it doesn't matter what your lending book is. Sure, RBS have billions and billions of pounds to loan, but they are on an equal footing to fintechs when it comes to servicing the customer on the equal playing field. And I would argue that Money Dashboard service the customer far better than RBS, not to just arbitrarily pick on RBS, but in terms of actually delivering customer delight, we do that.
Yeah, and I would say the difference is the customer delight versus actually that metadata and the transactional data. And you've heard this before, you'll hear it again. There is a vault of fascinating, compelling, contextual data that actually banks sit on. And unfortunately, because of the siloed nature of product lines, the fact that they account for them in product line rather than in aggregate, that they don't look at it from a customer level, they look at it not even from a market level, but really from a product level, that is trapped inside legacy systems. And the moment that banks are able to take the constraints of legacy off, even if it's a middle layer aggregate bypass until they actually can do a core transformation, that they're in the position to do some amazing things in terms of what they create product-wise, how they actually look at the customer from a dashboard perspective and giving them insight across what they have. It's an interesting thing that the traditional banks are in such a position of strength and have very, very limited time now that the window is closing to take advantage of that, because you are seeing growth stage companies that have gone through the trial of proving that they have a business model, that they have the tech in line, and now they've gone to the market and there is an appetite for them. I do see that collaboration makes the most sense. I see that white labeling services for fintech makes the right sense, and that we're missing out on that opportunity. But I think we actually do need to address the notion of security. So Dave.
Yeah, I agree, and I'd like to position this initially that I'm all for open banking and that whole side of it. I'm not sitting here on the bank side of this one. As I said, just insightful from the fact that we do a lot of testing in that world and how they take steps to protect data. And I think the key thing that underpins all of this is that we are shifting from what was a closed ecosystem. A bank would create an API to be more agile for itself, to be able to deliver digital services more rapidly and try and address some of those challenges of becoming customer-centric in that agile way. But it was being delivered to a platform that they still controlled, and it was therefore very linear and very much within their remit to control and put the security mechanism around. And a lot of effort is, a huge amount of effort you guys will never see behind the scenes is put into building robust and complex security models to protect that information and that data and your accounts and your PII as well. Great. Now, the shift here is actually opening up an API to other parties to consume. Is actually where are we shifting the protection of that data onto? So you have a platform that takes multiple feeds from 3 or 4 different banks and puts it into a new app. Now, actually, that app has to robustly protect the interaction with that API. And so the banks are now trusting a completely different party to do that, and actually that their data is treated as securely with third, fourth and fifth bank in that environment. So we need some levelling up of actually whose standard wins. You know, and this was the conversation from earlier on, that we need to get that floor put in place very, very rapidly, because otherwise you'll have infighting amongst the banks. That, you know, and we saw this with third-party due diligence activity that was going on for when the banks were blaming suppliers for their losses, for their breaches of personal information. And what you need to make sure is that everybody is on the same playing field, because otherwise you're going to have RBS wants to do it their way, Barclays wants to do it the other way, HSBC wants to do it their way, and you actually just get overload. The third party can't consume that many different audit requirements, assurance requirements. So yeah, let's get a playing field in that respect. But I think it's not unsurmountable. It's just a different focus on how we're dealing with it.
So I actually do see a lot of startups looking at secure DevOps and building test environments or building environments where the liability then shifts to the development point rather than the consumer of the end. It shifts a little bit where the responsibility lies. It's a better way to put it. And I do see a lot of conversation around the ops team or the development team actually having a secure environment in order to beta test and push out. And it really starts at the nascent point of the tech. And so we're talking about liability to I mean, you can actually, with the rise of this, you can almost see that people legally, not from the standards view, from a legal perspective, are actually saying we're going to put the liability on even just the test development start at the beginning of the fintech.
I think we need to educate fintechs well, and this is where you've got the maturity cycle of organisations that have been through this for a number of years and have gone through the pain of getting it wrong initially, and they're big enough to do so. A lot of fintechs are going to be very small and agile businesses that they need to get it right first time. If they don't get it right first time, they're going to fail and fall to the side. So test environments, beta environments, you say staging should not have any custom data. It needs to be test data. That's an absolute given, and you need to protect that environment. That who you give access to, you know, and you've got some provenance there. But taking a slightly different side to that, in terms of liability, GDPR, which is going to come in next year, is going to shift this slightly in terms of some of the coalescing of the thinking around this. And it's made a very clear statement. The data controller and the data processor will carry joint liability. Therefore, your third-party app, if they disclose the personal sensitive information, it's the bank and that provider that are going to be held accountable for that loss, and therefore opening yourself up to a 4% annual gross turnover sort of fine is not a trivial thing to be sniffing at. So I think the banks therefore are going to be driven to, again, gaining assurance that whoever they give access to that third-party API is doing things in the way that they are comfortable with, and it's going to keep snowballing down that.
So the legislation almost bakes in that insurance policy.
So just on that, the GDPR and the PSD2 do not align on that issue. One of the issues, we've got different directives going on which aren't fully tuned into each other relative to the same things. But reliability here is an absolute minefield, particularly in accounting provision.
I was going to add to your point about the differences between the banks and ask the question. One of the biggest fears is fragmentation in the market and fragmentation with open banking. That we've got this idea that there is an open banking, there's APIs that we can actually get access to. However, RBS will want to do it their way, HSBC will want to do it their way, and so long as everyone meets to the standard, then that's fine. But when we start bringing in, and obviously we won't go down the liability path, but the question is, there are conversations with different banks that are saying that, well, of course you can have the official standard, but if you're a chosen partner, well, we can give you extra data. Do you see that bringing, from a security perspective, we want you, yes, you have to meet the open banking security standards, but we want you to meet our standards which go above that. Do you see that bringing different headaches?
Without doubt, it will definitely bring headaches. Whenever there's complexity, there's an opportunity for there to be confusion, and therefore that allows things to go awry. So gaining assurance in that model is going to be even more difficult. It's difficult enough when you've just got the one standard to meet. If you're then going to be differentiating amongst that. But I think you're right, the banks will have the minimum that they require to disclose under the Open Banking Initiative, and then they'll have their value add. how they want to do things, and that be an attempt to keep some control for themselves, and to why you may not go down an open source route, you stick with their proprietary app. I think one of the fundamentals for me that sits under all of this is, as long as we can educate the fintech entities to take security and embed it at an early stage as a value add to their proposition, then clearly that's got to be the right avenue, because that gets everybody thinking in a structured way. And part of that is actually, yes, you've got an API, you can interact with the API, but your application sitting on that mobile device, you almost have to take the position that don't trust the mobile device. It is a hostile environment, and therefore what are you doing to then interact with that service in a secure fashion? And that's pretty much how we do a lot of our test engagements, and that premise is played out through those. And therefore a lot of the testing is going to fall onto the fintechs to do almost on behalf of the banks. Mm-hmm. You know, prove to us that your app protects the interaction with the API in a sensible and secure manner.
All right, guys, I think we'll wrap up there, because I think you've got a train to catch, don't you, Dave? So, thanks.
Thanks, Dave.